All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Quill and Hammer Reforging Fiction. I'm Trevor.
And I'm Zach, and today we're going to be tackling Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, the movie.
Now, we make that distinction because there's the book, and we would love to talk about the books in future episodes, but there are also the movies, and, clearly there are different things. So our parameters here are we're not changing anything about the plot. Anything that we would have fixed in the books or whatever, that is off the table. This is strictly using the books as the source material. What would we have done to make the movies better? But to begin with, Zach, let's talk about what we loved about the movie, because we loved the movie and the Harry Potter series. We're both big fans.
Well, I think one thing that they really nailed for the first movie is the tone. It's rather lighthearted. It's a feel-good film, and I think at the heart, at least when J.K. Rowling started writing the Harry Potter franchise, I think her intention was, okay, well, these are going to be kind of more kid-focused stories. You see that with the shorter length, the kind of more lighthearted tone. And as far as adapting that from the book to the movie for the first film, I think they absolutely nailed it. You have the score from John Williams, which is, I don't want to say it because it's corny, but magical. It, I mean, it all comes together really well. You can't help but smile at the end when Gryffindor wins the House Cup. It's like it is just a triumph of good over evil. And I think nailing that tone was something that they did really well.
I agree. Now, for me, I thought they did a fantastic job with casting here. I mean, I was going through, I watched it this week just to kind of refresh because it's been a while, but it was like the Dursleys. The Dursleys were perfect. Then you have, Daniel Radcliffe did a great job as Harry. You have, gosh, Hagrid. Hagrid is probably the most perfect cast character in existence. And then, you know, Ron and Hermione are great. You have, Snape, like
Yes.
Dumbledore, like everyone, bless his heart. It hurts me that Richard Harris died and they had to recast Dumbledore. And that's not, that's not anyone's fault. But I
Right.
thought he was the perfect Dumbledore and would have loved for him to have made it to, you know, the end. But that's how, life goes. But I thought they cast it really well. There wasn't one person I would have replaced in the movies. They did a great job there.
Just commenting on that about Richard Harris, and I will get into this as we go down the line and start talking about the other films in the franchise, but Richard Harris really embodied who Dumbledore was supposed to be. He was powerful but gentle and soft-spoken. He wasn't rushed, you know, and I forget the name of the guy who they recast him. He's great, but he doesn't have that same calming presence that Richard Harris brought to the first couple of films. And so I'm with you. I think it's a shame that he did pass away because he was an excellent, excellent cast.
And he was, like you said, he is what we viewed Dumbledore as, and it's almost unfair to anyone after because we were going to um compare. And
Exactly.
and maybe he wouldn't have held up for the, six more films and been who we wanted, as great a Dumbledore all the way through. I could be wrong because, it started what in 2001 and went through 2009 or 8. When did the last movie come out?
Oh, bro, it was way later than that,
Was
wasn't
it
it?
later than that?
I don't know. Let me look. Now I gotta know. I thought it was way later,
I
but
thought
boom.
they put like a movie out every 18 months or whatever.
Let's see. 2011. Okay, you were
2000.
closer to the mark.
All right. But anyway, could he have acted for another 10, 11 years to get, but I digress. That doesn't necessarily matter. Point is, it's almost unfair because then you are putting anyone who is replacing Dumbledore on this pedestal, or comparing to Richard Harris, who is on the pedestal and almost, you know, couldn't be couldn't be you know, good enough. But
Well, I think it's the same problem that you have with when franchises try to reboot, like the Batman franchise. You have oh shoot, what's his name from the Dark Knight trilogy?
Christian Bale.
Yeah, Christian Bale. I think that's going to be my favorite Batman of all time,
Hmm.
and because he did such a great job. And then you have oh my gosh, why can I not think of anybody's name? He's Cedric in number four. What's his name?
I know who he is, but I can't think of his name
It's
right
it's
now.
it is on the tip of my tongue and I cannot get it out. But anyway, the point is he's a great Batman, but he's not Christian Bale. And
Uh-huh.
that's what I've decided that I want, I guess, subconsciously. And it was the same thing with Dumbledore. You loved Richard Harris because it was perfect, and you're setting up anybody else for failure.
Right. But what else? Think of this is, moving a little bit forward. The great thing that they did is they nailed almost every single point, and certainly the main points that they needed as they filmed, made the film. And part of that is because the book is shorter, and so they
Right.
could get more in. But to like recap, you have Dumbledore dropping off Harry with, McGonagall and Hagrid. They're right there. They're dropping him off at the Dursleys. And then you get the vibe of how life was with the Dursleys as, they're, abusive to Harry. They love Dudley. Dudley clearly is spoiled and not perfect. They go to the zoo. You can just see how life was with them, and then the letters coming through, uh, going to the pool, or not the pool, the coast, and being on that little island out there, and Hagrid coming, and like that scene you get perfectly, and then Diagon Alley is just magical, and then the train and sorting, and like it just progresses on and on in a perfect way to capture the plot, right? Like
I think you're right. They they did do a really good job adapting all of the main points. And like I said, this kind of is going to be my overarching point, but they really did nail the tone. Like you said, they did show how horrible it was to live with the Dursleys. You understood that. And then you had the same wonder and awe that Harry was feeling when you went to Diagon Alley for the first time. And I think overall things were well paced and they did hit all the main points. But one thing that I wish they would have included, if we can start talking about how we would have fixed things, um, is I would have placed a little more emphasis on the rivalry between Harry and Malfoy. One thing that they left out, I say they did, but if you remember in the book, there is that point where Malfoy challenges Harry to the Midnight Duel, and Harry and Ron get ready to go, and they're out there, and they show up, and Malfoy's not there, right? And it's their trek back to the common room, which leads them to Fluffy, and that's kind of when the real plot of the movie starts to pick up, and you start to have that mystery of what is this giant dog doing here.
Right.
Um, and I feel like it wouldn't have been that difficult to play into that plot line a little bit more. And then Harry, Hermione, and Ron wouldn't have just stumbled upon the third floor corridor. In the movie, they're just walking up the stairs, and as they do, the stairs change and they kind of just wind up on the third floor corridor. It's kind of just a by accident type of thing with no rhyme or reason to it. But I would have played more into the rivalry between Draco and Harry, and then been able to use that plot point to make a little more sense of how they get to the Forbidden Corridor.
Right. I was thinking the same thing. It's especially with, that Draco rivalry. It's one of the things that, is a theme through every single book. And granted, disclaimer, you can't add everything in that you would, um but the Draco Harry rivalry is such a prominent point in all of the future, movies and books that I feel like you need to set the foundation a little bit more with the Midnight Duel, with, Malfoy being jealous that Harry gets a broom and is on the Quidditch team, and that sets up the antagonism and the rivalry that happens in, all of the remaining books.
Right,
And I think that's something that you could add in and it wouldn't have what's the word? It wouldn't have caused any problems,
right.
but it would have, it wouldn't have added much time to the movie, but it would have set the tone for the next coming videos and movies and stuff.
When I think about that, how you say, it should have set the tone for their rivalry throughout the series. You think about book six, The Half-Blood Prince, and Draco's kind of an integral part of the plot, and that flows into their rivalry and their, at least at that point, their hatred for each other. And I would have liked to see a little bit more of that throughout the entire series, but especially in the first book.
Me too. I agree. I was thinking a little bit, like I said, nitpicky things because they did such a good job, but uh in a perfect world, I would have loved to have seen Peeves
Hmm.
and the ghosts play a little bit more prominent role. Now I know that's hard on from a filmmaker's point of view, having to add in more CGI, more um elements after, and that, you know, kind of increase costs and problems and things. But I don't think there was ever any doubt that this was going to be a very successful film series. So I wish they would have added more of that in because Peeves is just a little bit of fun and mischief here and there that, you know, adds to the magic of Hogwarts.
Right. And like you said, I don't think it would have been too difficult to do that. It does add some extra work and it may have made things a little more clunky, but having that in there would have been it would have rounded things out a little bit more, I think. Um, and thinking about it, I think I would have added a little bit more of the they're in class type situations. You have the one trying to think the scene where they're in potions class and Snape is destroying Harry because he hates him. And then you have charms class with Wingardium Leviosa, and I think that's about it. as far as I can remember in the movie.
Mhm.
And I wish they would have put a little bit more of the classroom situations back into the film.
Right.
And that's when you can have Peeves come in and start causing a little bit of chaos. You can even use those scenes to illustrate the rivalry between Draco and Harry again. But overall, I think you would have gotten more of the feel that they're actually at school. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You see them kind of between classes because that's where most of the adventure happens. But you don't really get a feeling that they're at school full time and they have homework and deadlines and you don't really get that feel from watching the movie.
Right. And it's not necessarily even a big plot point, but it sets, once again the tone that it's like, yeah, they're really in school. This is all taking place at a school. We need to, you know, put that together.
Right.
The other little small things that bothered me, like it's such an important part of the book that like no one says Voldemort's name.
Right.
And right from the beginning, Hermione is saying it. And of course Harry says it because he doesn't know and wasn't.
Right.
But Hermione growing up there, or not growing up there, doing all of the study knows you're not supposed to say that name. Oh,
Right.
she knows and she follows that and everyone's scared and it just seems like everyone buys into that like don't say his name, don't say his name, and it's all you know who and which is it's a fun quirk of the whatevers, but like it's Harry and Dumbledore, and those are the two that will say it until
Right.
later on when that starts to be challenged.
Right.
But that's just a little nitpicky thing. I think she says it once, but it is just continuity nitpicky things. The other thing that I was nitpicky about was um when Harry is going to get on the train. I know you have to have some way for him to find the Weasleys or whatever. Um, I just thought it was a little heavy-handed where, Miss Weasley is going through King's Cross Station and is just shouting, "Hey, platform 9 3/4 this way. Come on, let's go." Like
Right.
just a little hammy, like, you know, the subtlety of it in the book is that she says the word muggle talking to the kids, and that's what clues Harry in, and that's why he goes and follows them. Um,
Right.
and that's where but like I said, nitpicky, very nitpicky thing.
Well, as long as we're playing the nitpick game, this is something that I cannot understand why they did. This may be my biggest gripe of the entire film. In the movie, when Hagrid is explaining where he got Fluffy, he says, I won him off an Irish fellow or something. But in the book, it's I won him off a Greek fellow because
Uh-huh.
it's a three-headed dog. It's supposed to be funny that this is Cerberus. Like
Yes.
that's the whole point. It's a three-headed dog. That's obviously Greek mythology. He got him off of a Greek bloke. But
Yeah.
no, they change it. I do not know why they change it. I
I
it just it blows my mind.
I
There's
thought I
no
was
reason.
I thought I was the only person to notice that because I
No.
was I was sitting there thinking that in this second walkthrough or my most recent watch of the video because I was preparing for this and taking notes and all of that, but it was like, wasn't it supposed to be Greek because
It's
it's Greek mythology?
it's Cerberus. It's this giant three-headed dog. It's Cerberus.
Uh-huh.
Like it just and it makes it even funnier that you have the guardian of the underworld and Hagrid views him as this little puppy. You know what I mean? Like it I just
Right.
I don't know why they did that, and I'm not kidding. That's probably my biggest gripe about the entire film.
I mean, you're not wrong, Zach. You are not wrong. That is something that needs to be in there. It is just such a fun little inside joke with anyone who knows anything about, you know, Greek mythology and magic and whatever, and it just fits in so perfectly. Oh my gosh. You're right. But
Now, there was another part of the book where Ron and Harry are taking Norbert up to the top of the castle to his brother Charlie. Would you have put that in there? As I think that's when they get caught and made to go to the Forbidden Forest with Hagrid later. And am I
no,
wrong there? Is that how it happens in the book?
you're correct. So in the book, they they go down to see Hagrid. And I can't remember if it's because they probably find out about the Sorcerer's Stone. They go to ask Hagrid about it. But Hagrid has the egg in the fire, in his fireplace, and he's tending to it. And they kind of freak out. They're like, "What are you doing with this egg?" And then over the course of a week or so, they, keep going down and they're trying to say, "Why you can't have a dragon? You live in a wooden hut. You can't do this," like. And then it's not Ron who does it. It's Harry and Hermione go out because Ron gets bit by the dragon after it hatches, and his hand gets, swells up or whatever.
Mm,
But, they are correct that Draco was, following them, saw the dragon, ran back to the whatever. No, I maybe that's how it happened, but it's the entire point is they had to get it to the very top of the tower so that they could smuggle the dragon out, so Hagrid wouldn't get in trouble for having an illegal dragon, and
right.
and no one's supposed to know, and
So
that's
would you have kept that part of the plot, smuggling the dragon out, or do you think it was unnecessary and they made a good choice just to have it kind of happen off screen without Harry and the gang?
so I know you have to do something, because that would take up, you know 10 or 15, maybe not 15, 10 minutes of screen time to explain all that, like, and stuff has to happen in between.
Right.
But I would like to see that because it shows that, Neville, who thinks he's cowardly, um, is trying to go out and save his friends, even though he kind of doesn't really have friends. You know what I mean? Like, so,
Now, remind me here, I don't
yeah.
remember Neville's involvement in this plot.
So Neville overhears Malfoy telling, or talking to Crabbe and Goyle, setting up Harry and Hermione because the two of them are going to get the dragon and take it all up. Well, in the book, Malfoy is, tormenting Ron, who's in the hospital wing, and told, Madame Pomfrey he bitten by a dog, and that's what's swelling, but it's not.
Hmm.
So he comes in and he's like, "I'm gonna tell," and he's just being, a pain in the butt or whatever. Well, he takes, borrows a book, and it has the letter from Charlie in it, outlining exactly the time they're supposed to meet at the top of the tower. And
Right.
what they're going to do. So he knows that they're going to be out that night, and so he tries to set them up by going to, I think it was Professor McGonagall, and saying like, "Hey, Harry has a dragon. Harry Potter has a dragon. He's supposed to be here." And then
Right.
they go up to the tower. They're super happy because Malfoy has detention or whatever. But um, but Harry, or not Harry, Neville, having overheard Crabbe, Goyle, and Malfoy talking, sees that they had left, and he goes out to try and find them to warn them of, like, hey, you're being set up by Malfoy, like, you know. And so he
That's
gets
right.
detention because he went out, um, and it was a stupid, thing where Hermione and Harry leave the invisibility cloak at the top of the tower, and then, they are just in detention. And so it's Neville, Harry, Hermione, and Malfoy instead of Ron, Harry, Hermione, and Malfoy in
I
detention.
had I had forgotten about that, that in the book, Ron's not with them when they go into the Forbidden Forest.
Hmm.
I had forgotten about that. So yeah, that is a good point that it has a little bit more of a character development for Neville, which becomes important as you begin wondering who the Half-Blood Prince is and who the prophecy is about, those types of things.
Right.
Um, but like you said, you have to pick your battles as a filmmaker, and I understand that, but in a perfect world, it it would be good to throw all of these things in there, I think.
It would. Now, I know in a perfect world, we could follow chapter by chapter, you know, and go through, and it takes however long it takes. If it's going to be a 4 hour movie, it's going to be a 4 hour movie. If you have to split them, if you have to split every movie into, two parts, and you end up having 16 movies, then great. Let's have 16 movies. I know that's not feasible, because it just takes so long, and you're fighting this battle between your child actors growing up and still appearing like they could be in school,
Right.
and you know time and money and all of this stuff. But I don't think that that was the issue in the first movie. I think you could have put everything in, and I would have been completely happy with it. But then
Right.
again, you have to pick your battles. You have child labor laws and all of these things, and so it's just not feasible to put everything in, but I wish it was. Like with this upcoming Harry Potter series on HBO Max, like, not HBO Max, it's just Max anymore, isn't it? But anyway,
I'm
like, it doesn't matter. They're supposedly doing one season for every book, and I would love to see more of this stuff that we're talking about put into it. But as far as the movies go, I feel like, especially in this first one, they hit the main points. And if you leave out the Charlie and the Dragons because you're, already at 2 hours and 20 minutes of time, like,
It's not that important.
it's not that important.
You still get the gist of it by Malfoy spying on Norbert hatching and running to tell McGonagall, and then they all go.
Right.
But well, let me ask you, do you think, and I guess we'll I'm sure we'll talk about it once the series comes out, but do you think these books lend themselves better to the movie format, or do you think a TV series would be more faithful and ultimately better at capturing the spirit of the books?
I think a TV series, if it's done right, could be done. I think that would have been the proper way to do it from the beginning because it it lets you explore a little bit more of these, little things that we think about,
Right,
um, that we're talking about. You have a 20 to 30 minute episode and think what they did in the first 20 to 30 minutes of this movie, um and introducing Harry and Voldemort and Hagrid and all of this stuff, and like all of those little things that are a little nitpicky we can talk about, you know we can figure out. And I feel like that would have been a better medium. But like I said, you have to do it right. It's the we're going into a reboot of the series, and so now we're like, but that's not how Daniel Radcliffe did it. That wasn't how he played. That's not my
right,
Dumbledore.
right,
And so you have to go in with tempered expectations, but I feel like if they do it right, it has a lot of potential to fix all of these little things that we're talking about because you have more time. Because you can, have an 8 hour, you know, essentially an 8 hour movie, depending on how many episodes you feel you need. It's, 30 minutes times 12 or 13 or 14 episodes. That's, 7 6 7 hours to get all of the stuff in that you couldn't fit in because you just run out of time in a 2.5 hour movie.
right. Now the only issue or danger I would say with doing a TV series type format is you need enough organic tension in each episode to justify having the episode.
Yep.
And if there aren't enough moments of mystery or enough plot devices in the book itself to justify those episodes, then you run into pacing problems and you have to start making things up or making significant changes to the plot, which don't necessarily work. And I'm bringing that up because of, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in later episodes, but because of the um, Percy Jackson TV series that recently came out on Disney Plus. Recently, I guess it's been over a year, but and we'll get into that. But I feel like there were some pacing problems and things that changed that maybe shouldn't have. And I'll be interested to see how they do with this Harry Potter series. But that's my worry is that things will be different because they have to make enough of a how do I want to say it, enough of a plot point in each episode to justify having the episode, if that makes sense.
It does. It absolutely does. And I think you can get by that if you're smart. Um, because think of all the stuff that's happening at a school. I think Percy Jackson is hard because you have this mystical, the Greek mythology in modern times, and they're going from point A to point B, and you have to really, I don't know, figure out what's going on. I don't know. I'm not making sense, but the quest where you've got three people on a quest and you have to, you know, manufacture things happening around three people enough to make it to a 20 or 30-minute episode every single time. That's difficult, but you have at Hogwarts so many different people and characters that are always around that you can do plot points. You can show over season one, Neville being not forgettable, but forgetful. You can show more of, gosh, we could do all three Quidditch matches. You could have an entire plot point of the entire Quidditch Cup every year, and
Right.
and you could do more classes, more things happening. Um, and I'm not necessarily against adding in plot points and things, but you could show like more antagonism and rivalry between Harry and Malfoy and you know like Oliver Wood's quirks and I mean there are all of these little things that happen all throughout the series that you could feasibly manufacture things, I guess, that fit within the world, fit within the scenario that you're in, and would get you to, a full season of content without breaking the spirit of the book.
Right.
Uh,
Well, it'll be interesting to see how they do.
yeah. And I don't know how, I mean, I think they're still in the, casting stage, so I don't think it's been, even entered into production. Maybe I'm wrong, uh, but it would be interesting to see. But anyway, back to the movies, Zeke. What else? Is there anything else you can think of that you would have changed? I think the main plot point that they missed out on um was the dragon, but they boiled that essence down to where it needs to be. What else was there?
The only other thing that I can think of that I maybe would have liked to see, or maybe they could have fleshed out a little more, um, was Snape's trial protecting the stone. If you remember, there's several potions and there's a riddle, and you have to use logic about, which one to drink to get through to the next chamber or how to get back, that sort of stuff. Um, and I know it's just a simple little scene, but it again shows Hermione's unequivocal knowledge and logic and her intelligence.
Mhm.
And not that I think they diminished that in any way. It's obvious that she's the most intelligent, probably out of their whole year. But I think that just would have, I think it was just a missed opportunity to showcase it once again and to have Harry, well, how the heck are we supposed to figure this out? And then Hermione just works through it because that's who she is.
Right. I think I agree with you. It would have taken what, 3 minutes? I think,
Maybe
but
five.
maybe five. But I like that in the entire series, another theme is you don't really trust Snape, and
Right,
it's like, why does Dumbledore trust Snape? What does, and it's just this doubt throughout, and you think it's Snape all throughout the first book. And Harry, Ron, and Hermione think that they are going to find Snape behind, you know, all of it, trying to get the stone. He's in there, and so you're going to confront Snape. Well, that's not what happened. And but I think it adds a little bit of, of oh yeah, of course Snape was able to figure this out. He created it and went through, And to that point,
right,
um, Quirrell found a troll and had it in there, if you remember in the book.
right, right,
And so you've got, uh herbology teacher, you've got McGonagall, you've got, you know, Flitwick who does the keys, you've got the defense against the dark arts teacher, so Quirrell, and then you've got Snape. And I think like I said, you have to cut out certain things, but I feel like that would have been what I would have liked to see. Just Hermione work through it and just kind of this is brilliant because, it's logic, it's not magic.
Right, right.
So I agree with you. Is there anything else before we sign off for the week that you would have changed or any other comments about the book, the movie?
No, I think it was very well done. Um, when we go over what we would like to change about the books, I'll have some more thoughts. But as far as adapting the source material to a film, they did an excellent job. And you can tell because most of the things that we talked about here are nitpicky, but they really did do an excellent job of capturing the tone of the film, getting all the major plot points. The casting was phenomenal. So I really don't have any more gripes. The only one that's going to bring it down is it should have been a Greek guy, not whatever it was.
I agree 100% with all of the points, especially the Greek guy. But I'm with you. I think they did a fantastic job. I think they adapted it perfectly. The tone, the music, the casting, it was all fantastic. And it really sets the expectation for me moving forward of what the movies should be. And maybe we're going to talk about that and as we move forward. But um, I think they did a really good job here and set up the next movies really well and gave it a foundation to move forward. And yeah, I really, really loved the movie. I forget, you know, I was 11 when it came out in 2001. You were, what,
6.
6. Um, like it just, it's magical. It was our childhood.
It was.
Remember waiting for the books to come out, or were you too young to get into the books at that point?
The book I remember coming out and want like so excited for was The Deathly Hallows. I think I was maybe sixth or seventh grade,
Uh-huh.
something like that. And I remember that's probably the first book that I actually read on my own.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I mean, I remember I did, for some reason it they must have come out near my birthday, or maybe I'm remembering wrong. But I remember we would go to the city. We grew up in a little rural place, and we would drive up to the city around my birthday to watch the movie in the big movie theater.
Uh-huh.
And I remember doing that for number two and number three, maybe number four, but no, I mean they were our childhood. It was a fantastic series.
It was, and captured the books and the movies captured so many fans' hearts. And so, I think something to be said is that we loved all 8 movies and 7 books, and we were anticipating everything coming up. And it's only after rewatching them, and rereading the books probably 100 times that we are coming up with these little things that we would have changed. But like I said, it is mostly us just like nitpicking at this point of things that we would have added, things that we missed from the books to the movies. But you know, we loved this series, and so moving forward, I hope you can capture, as we talk about, next week, the Chamber of Secrets and so on, that you can see our love for this because we really do love these books and these movies and it's the same with Star Wars and it's the same with Pirates. We love these films and these pieces of fiction, and we just want to talk about them and share our love for them, right?
And I mean, you can see that because we talk every episode, we start talking about what we love about them. And there is so much to love about all these pieces of fiction, like you said. Um, but hopefully we can shed some light on just a few areas that would elevate them just that little bit more.
Right. But I guess we're going to leave it there. We are about out of time. We're about out of content and on the verge of rambling even more. So, we're going to sign off. We will be back again next week with another episode of Quill and Hammer. If you liked this episode, please subscribe, comment, share with your friends. We would love to have more people engaged in this and tell us what they would have changed, what they liked about the movies, how they would have adapted things in their mind. And so we're gonna end it there and sign off. But yeah, I'm Zach. No, I'm not Zach. He's Zach. I'm Trevor. I'm an idiot. We're done. Appreciate all of you for listening.
We'll catch you next time, guys.